we'll get started. All right. All right, looks like we're good here. Let me mute this. Okay, welcome everyone to the Boone County Tax Board Committee to review the payroll tax capital fund allocations. Wanted to quickly go over our public meeting announcement. As we did in the spring, all of you were part of our spring meetings, and as you know, to meet virtually, we have some certain requirements, including broadcasting this meeting, and we did send notice to all those who had a notice on file with the Judge's Office requesting notification of special meetings. So I'm just going to quickly read through this and get through this piece of it, and we'll discuss how we're going to operate today. Public meeting notice, the Boone County Tax Board Committee pursuant to KRS 61.826 and OAG 20-05 will meet on Tuesday, November 10th, 2020 at 2 p.m. Eastern via video teleconference. This meeting format has been necessitated due to the state of emergency regarding threats to public health presented by the novel coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. The meeting may be attended by the public by viewing the video teleconference via YouTube at www.youtube.com/channel/UCG10FG8BMAX4MKJGOLJETOA. The meeting agenda will be posted in advance of the meeting, and residents may submit questions or comment regarding any item to the Human Services Director, L. Plyman at BooneCountyKY.org, no later than Monday, November 9th, 2020 at 12 noon. We received no comments from the public, so we do not have to address any of those. So what's going to happen today is that we will present a meeting and, our information regarding calendar year 20 allocations, just give you a brief update on where we stand with those projects. The department, as you've received the applications for calendar year 21 allocations, we have some recommendations, and then we'll finalize with whatever your recommendations are, and then those will go to the fiscal court. I think likely the first meeting in December is when that will be made available to them. So any questions?
No.
So go ahead, Dee. Did you have a question, Dee?
No, I'm sorry. No.
That's okay. And for anybody who may be watching, our third member is Dee Dragon, who is on the phone here. Let me see if I can do that real quick. Make a quick change for you on your name. So your phone number is not there. So the calendar year 20 allocations. So we had, you'll recall, for those of you who we did give an update on, you were not on the recommendation page or recommendation group for funding for calendar year 20, which was our first year of programs. We had 5 organizations submit, and I'm going to try to pull up the information here. Give me just a moment. I didn't pull this up ahead of time. 5 organizations who submitted requests for funds, and for varying reasons, they have been successful or not successful. COVID is obviously an impact for some of it, but for other reasons, some of those projects have not started, I think. And I'll pull this up if you give me just a moment. I apologize, everyone. Thought I had it here. Well, and I can't find my presentation that I'm looking for you all, so I apologize for this delay. Let me just run through them real quick with you. I'll do it without the report then. I apologize, without the presentation. So our first project was through Brighton Properties. They requested funds to repair their building on Shelby Street in Florence, some repairs to a roof, the parking lot, and to a door in the facility. Those projects were all able to be completed. That project was fully funded at the requested level. They were able to be, and all those repairs were able to be made earlier this year. So that was a successful completion to that project. Actually, Carolyn, you may know a little bit about that. You served on the Brighton Properties Board, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, great.
Brighton Center has been a great partner, and they've really allowed us to use that facility. They've been, that building has been well used within the community, and it was was it a Social Security office? It was a federal building, right?
Yeah, I think it was. I don't exactly know what its past life was, but yeah, I love how Brighton Center kind of takes stuff like that, like old things that people really don't really want to invest in, and they do something good with it.
Yeah. There was an interior door that had been disrepaired forever. And because it was a federal building, this door was a special kind of door, and the framing was very crazy, and something was about it because it was a very secure door. And so in order to repair it, it was pretty costly. So they hadn't done it until this. So I haven't been able to actually be in there to see that door since it was done, but I'm sure it was a significant increase or to the project. So the next organization, we had a large request from New Day Ranch for 3 projects. One was funds to purchase a piece of property next to the ranch to eventually build a caretaker on that. The second was funds to build a pole barn for a vocational skills building. And the third was to purchase a vehicle to assist with transportation of Boone County students. Not long after the funds were approved for both the vocational building and the vehicle, the board recommended passing the purchase of the land. New Day Ranch called and said they were not going to be able to purchase the vehicle because upon further consideration, the cost to insure the van to transport students was too much. And so they weren't going to pursue that particular project. I did speak with the director in late summer and asking for updates about the vocational skills building. And it appears to me that they have had some other funding become available for both the purchase of the land adjacent to the property and then also for repairs of their main barn. And I don't believe that they're going to be using this additional funds, which is disappointing. The funds were allocated there for them to do that, but they had other funds become available and they have started other projects. So those funds will remain unused. That was $88,500 for the vocational building and $29,000 for the van. The next project, that was just Community Action Commission proposed, it was really a project, a purchase of a vehicle and the development of an app to transport individuals to facilities, to employment sites within Boone County. So they started this program, purchased the van, they developed the app, and started operating this program in early in the year. They took a pause during the really early stages of COVID, but re-engaged later this year. That's been a successful program for them. The Panorama Plus facility, that is a senior high-rise on the kind of the edge of Florence, almost close, pretty close to Union. They requested funds to do some building maintenance, facility renovation for HVAC, window replacement, and some repair to the parking lot. The board and the fiscal recommended funding for replacement of the windows and the HVAC, and both of those projects were accomplished. And then finally, Redwood asked for funding for expanding their site into Boone County. They had anticipated having that site available and open in July of 2020. After, even through COVID, they were reconsidering the process. They did find a facility, actually the old Women's Crisis Center here on 237, and started to move forward with it. But in September, they've decided to not move forward with that project. So they feel that the demand for that service has decreased due to COVID. So they're not pursuing it at this time. So those funds will be unspent. That's about $10,000. That was a smaller allocation. So mixed success with this year, with this allocation, but we'll see. Any questions about those? Okay. And I know you all weren't necessarily involved in this early allocation and decision, but I wanted to update as members of some of our boards who were there to do that. Okay, so fiscal year or calendar year 21, I have to say that I think we had a small number of respondents to this application process, a little bit smaller than maybe we'd hoped, but I think this is part of the reality of the environment that we're in currently and the capacity of those who are working to just really start and develop things without really knowing of what the future is holding at the time. So these were submitted in early October. So this is just what they were able to do. I will share now my screen. Let me make sure this is pulled up. So we had 3 requests. You're not seeing my screen yet, are you? You are seeing. Let me try this one more time.
I saw your screen.
Did you get to see the?
Mm-hmm.
All that showed up for me was the YouTube. I'm sorry. I'm gonna make sure. Here, let's try this one more time. Are you able to see this now?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. Maybe my YouTube was just behind it. I'm so tech savvy. So this is our, these are the applications for the projects that we received for calendar year 20. We received 3 projects. The first one, and I had them as listed alphabetically, but then upon reconsideration, I renamed one of these organizations. So the first one you see listed there is The Point. Originally, maybe when it was sent out, listed as the Bill and Betsy Shaven Care Center, formerly known as Community Services. They're asking for funds to renovate the bathrooms and kitchenettes in the facility, the main public bathrooms and the kitchenettes in 3 of the rooms, and then 2 additional bathrooms in the facility. So that's what their request is. That total request amount was $103,848. The second program organization is Brighton Center, Inc. The request for this organization is for computer stations at the Brighton Recovery Center located here in Florence. This is a modification of the original submission. We had some questions regarding the project, and we'll go into that a little bit further when we cover each of them a little bit more. And then finally, Community Action Commission requesting funds for a project they're calling Connecting People in Boone County During a Pandemic. Their total request was $87,920. And you can see that on the list there is what the department's recommendation is. The total request for all our funds is $226,797. This is if you fund all 3 of those programs at that request rate. The total falls within our allocation ability. The total that's available this year was $350,000. But as you can see, it's going to be our recommendation that we don't move to quite that high of a level. So is that questions about that particular part? Let me stop that share for a minute. So I have here, and I want to walk through this process a little bit. We'll start with The Point and the Bill and Betsy Shaven Care Center. Are any of you familiar with the community center, the Bill and Betsy Shaven Center? A little bit. So there's a little bit about our ID allocation. I'm pulling it up here again. I apologize. I already have this up. I'm sorry.
That's the old Easter Seal building, isn't it?
Yes. It is. It is the, I think in here they go through the history of what they are. Okay, so. I'm going to pull up their actual request just so we can talk about it here. I was smoother at this in the spring, so I apologize. So this was the request from their center, and through it, as we mentioned earlier, they're looking for assistance with their 4 public bathrooms and kitchenettes within the building. I think they described down here further or in another paragraph what all their names are. But yes, this is the facility that's located on Spiral Drive in Florence. Their primary function now is to do daycare, adult daycare services for individuals with an intellectual disability or those who are aged and need assistance. So like a caregiver can leave. This building was formerly the Easter Seals. As you can see, it was listed as a Christian school. They used to have a hearing. They used to do some hearing stuff there too, and things like that. It's kind of cool. The organization itself, and then this. You'll remember. Do any of you remember well, let's go through the process. What they're asking for, and their statements here want to make their facility look less institutional, and then that they have, and they outlined. I don't know that I think I sent along to you all the long proposal that they received as far as taking out, redoing the bathrooms and how they're going to make just make it a little more LED and energy efficient and things like that. But the places that I would highlight here that I think that are why we're not recommending funding partially is that they want to make it look less institutional. They want better aesthetics. And there's some mention of functionality, but it's not necessarily the gist that we're getting from this is that they're looking for really cosmetic repairs to the facility. It's not going to increase the function of the programming. It's not going to expand the function of the programming within the community. It's something internal. So that's part of our recommendation here. The other piece is that, and Carolyn and Dee, you are going to be more familiar with the Children's Advocacy Center. You both are familiar with that. At one point, both the Children's Advocacy Center and Community Services were under the umbrella of the Community Foundation of Northern Kentucky. So that foundation formed when St. Elizabeth and St. Luke merged, and the St. Luke Foundation pulled off. And apart with it, there were some projects that they had. One of them was the Children's Advocacy Center. There was some women's health that CE didn't want to have on, and there was some funding associated with it. I think at the time, like $3 million, $6 million. Somehow Cardinal Hill at the time folded underneath with Northern Kentucky Community Foundation. And so rather than acting as a real foundation for many years, they really were a foundation with a board that had 2 organizations that fell underneath it that they gave support to, Children's Advocacy Center and the Community Services. 3-4 years ago, the director at the foundation made the recommendation to the board to dissolve the board the way it was functioning and get the funds into the community. And there was a lot of, I would have to say, there was a lot of back and forth about how that was handled. A lot of organizations did get some funds from the Community Foundation. There were 2 big winners, in my opinion. One of them was The Point. Kathy, again, you're going to be familiar with The Point. And part of this, and I will also share this. Part of this, and if you were able to, and I don't know how closely you all looked at. Let me pull this up first. Oh, sorry. Part of this was listed in their audited financial statements. The part that I want to show you. What happened? So when reviewing the audited financial statements and knowing this, I was reviewing this audited, and I'm going to zoom in here. I know that sometimes this is difficult to read. This is their audited financial statements, and you'll see that note 3, operating lease, that they have an operation when Community Foundation of Northern Kentucky dissolved. They gave the building, community services is over to the Point. Additionally, they gave $1 million to the Point for operating the facility, and they had to agree to operate the program, community services as a program in that building for 3 years. So this would have been that the operation lease would end in June of 2021, which would be concerning if not knowing what the Point's interests were in operating the plan. I mean, there seems to be a reason for them to continue to operate it, but not knowing. So I reached out to the executive director and asked her, and she shared this. With me. And this is a memorandum of understanding. Again, let me zoom in here. An MOU between the Point and the Bill and Betsy Shaven Community Care Center. Essentially what this is saying is that the Point is taking, the Point will become the parent corporation of the Community Services Northern Kentucky. They'll have a separate the board. They had a board, but the board will dissolve. So the board will now be the Points board. The director for the community center is trying to say that they're still operating as a separate organization, but they're really not based upon this statement. Particularly of concern to me were a few things here. So in asking the executive director what their match would be, you'll recall that for capital funds, it was a requirement that 25% match by the organization had to be there. We want the organization to show us that they're going to have some skin in the game. And the response from, and it listed in the application, is that they were going to pull down from their investments, take their 5% that they take off interest of their investments annually and use it to that, which would be about $40,000 for this project. So two things here. So when we're looking at that, based upon that statement here, make sure you pull out the right one first. 8 here. With regard to capital expenditures, the executive director shall seek approval from the Point board of directors for any expenses exceeding $5,000. So we don't see that listed here, but that's not my major concern with this particular project. Additionally, if you go down to J, so this is talking about the original $1 million allocation from the Community Foundation to the Point for operation of community services. It says that $500,000 of that will be utilized for any and all Point programs as part of the Point's general fund. And then the remaining $613,000 will be kept by restricted account for operation and maintenance of the Shaven Center. So when I look at those two pieces, I feel like that's probably that's additional funding that's available. That if this is a needed renovation for functionality within the organization, that there are two potential pots of money that this can be pulled from to provide those. And when looking at taxpayer dollars, I don't see how this is showing the demand and the need for making that, and particularly if the program isn't going to be expanded. So because of that, in discussion within the department here, our recommendation is not to fund this project at this time. Hoping that if they wish to pursue it, that's fine, but this is our recommendation. Any questions about this one?
I agree with the recommendation.
And to be clear, and I know Kathy, we've received a couple of applications from, whereas the Point has been an applicant in the past for ID funds and they've been a recipient of ID funds in the past. We've had some issues with the Point as far as clarity of their need and for their funding, and then also for their programming. It's been, so the Point has not received funds from the fiscal court for their programs in about 5 years. And so I don't necessarily think that the programming is get funding for the community services, the Shaven Care Center. I'm going to have to have that discussion with them as to what they really are, because the way that I read this, they really are a program at the Point. They've gotten funding, but the Point itself has not gotten funding recently.
Well, and I feel like part of this equation is the fact that at least from what I could see for the two other proposals that are in there, they seem more applicable to now because they're computer and technology related. Whereas this is in person, which maybe that's a next year problem for them to sort out, something like that. But I feel like connectivity is so important right now. And I can't imagine, at least in the next 6 months, I mean, I don't know, that there will be a ton of people meeting in that building for them that, I don't know. I could see I feel like the money could be used better connecting people at this time.
I totally agree with that statement.
And I'll share too, with the facility itself underwent a major renovation since I've been with Boone County. So within the last 10 years or so, the facility itself it does feel very homey. It's a nice facility for individuals who are spending their day there. They do a great job with that. I just don't know that taxpayer dollars need to be used to make something else feel homey too.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Right, especially since, we've kind of taken a stand in the lately with the children's home and those kinds of issues. So I feel like it would kind of make us a little bit hypocritical if we don't follow the same suit, here. You know what I mean? Like we've talked before about how they've made everything so, I don't want to just say shiny and pretty, but shiny and pretty. And, when I feel like right now, like Carolyn said, there's a lot of other places that I think that the money should be better spent.
Totally
if
agree.
it's a nice functioning building, right now I think that's, you should consider yourself lucky.
Yeah, I agree. And I see your point too. It seems hypocritical if we're telling the children's home of Northern Kentucky that they need to quit spending money on how beautiful their building looks and spend it more on programming for which they have asked for funding rather, so then it's sort of the same premise.
Yeah. Right.
And I don't know that it's done at the same level, but to my knowledge, it's the same person recommended and assisted with some of that renovation.
Oh,
There's some overlap there somewhere. There's a definite sense of it's not quite the same, but there's some overlap there between those two organizations.
Interesting.
Gotcha.
So, okay, we can take an official vote at the end of this, but if anything changes between now and then, we certainly can. I'll move on to the next organization unless you all have any questions about this particular project.
Mm-mm.
Nope.
Great. Okay, so the next on my list was the Brighton Center here. Alphabetical, sort of not alphabetical. I think you all are, most of you are pretty familiar with Brighton Center, and the Recovery Center is located here in Florence. Or does anybody need a further explanation of what that Recovery Center is?
No.
Okay. So the project here is looking for upgrading their computers within the facility. Approximately half of them are going to be for staff and half of them are going to be for use by the clients, the customers, and the ladies that are in the programs. I can tell you, I am very familiar that the Brighton Center as a whole has really, and they mentioned in their project, access to Salesforce. They've done an organization-wide, very intentional project to upgrade their reporting software within the organization as a whole, which will allow for easier tracking and reporting, and really kind of capitalizing on technology so that they can use their staff in the best ways within their programs. So part of that will help the staff here at the Recovery Center participate in that software. I can tell you personally, I know because Anita Prater is the director here at the Recovery Center, was the chair of a group we were both part of, and I had to take over as vice chair for many of the meetings because she was at meetings learning how to use this new software project last year. So she owes me for that one. She gave me this gavel. So the project is, we went back and forth with them a little bit, had some questions about, and this was something that we struggled with both Brighton Center and Community Action Commission. Their original proposals included things like administrative costs or indirect costs or staffing time. And really, because this is a capital fund, this is not programmatic funding, especially if this is going to end up with an asset for the organization. Two things: we weren't going to pay for those indirect or personnel costs, or I think facility costs was an additional in one of them. And then we also were asking that, so we don't really, that can't be a match. We want you to see, we want to see that you have a financial dog in the fight for this, to let us know that you're part of this, because we feel like, especially with these first two projects, they're going to walk away with an asset that the county has paid for. So really struggle with that, because, you know, Brighton Center has a pretty uniform policy. And the reason it wasn't an issue last year is it was Brighton Properties who pursued the funds, not Brighton Center, to apply a 15% indirect fee on any funds like that, which makes a lot of sense when you're talking about programmatic issues, because, you know, those are going to help organizations who are really well thought out to take care of all those administrative costs. You know, obviously there are administrative costs that aren't going directly into the programming, but help the organization run. However, because this is a capital fund, and we were going to be much more clear about this in the application in the future, we felt like that needed to be pulled out. So we negotiated with them. They went back, they took it back and reviewed it. They originally had submitted for 15 computers, and they had been planning on purchasing a bigger one for their IT closet to manage this. But they just went ahead and put that in because they had budgeted for that. So when you do that, you can see on the application that was sent out that there are 16 units listed there, and then there's 2 of the wireless controllers. And their funds that they're doing are one of those computers and some additional funds in each of those other categories for about $6,466. That's not quite 25% of the ask. It's about 20%. So we feel like this is a good project. This is what this is meant for. They're going to be able to report out. They're expanding programming to their clients inside the building. But rather than saying that, they really need to get that 25% maximum. So that's why on our recommendation, the request is a little bit less than 25. It's at 24,000. It was a rounded number from the actual project cost of 32,000. See how much did I lose here? It's about $69, $70 less than what that would be. But any questions from that, or did you guys like this project, or?
I like this project.
Yeah, I think it's money well spent.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
She did clarify, I had asked her 2 questions. That they have I asked her about these stations would be replacing existing ones. She said they do have some, that they are expanding them. And so some of them are going to be within the facility for the to use as they needed to do so.
Laura, I don't remember reading. I guess I wish I had more about the sustainability. It's on page 3.
Yeah, I think that. I think, sure, go ahead.
If they had, I don't know if they have a cycle that they replace equipment with. That seems to me that would be, it just says will continue and maintain diversified funding stream. Seems to me if they're buying equipment, they might have a cycle of replacement.
And I can ask for clarification from them on that and get back to you if you'd like. If we could either wait, and if you want to, if at the end of this we want to that answer or approve it, and then I can get that response. I'm sure they would give us that response as well.
That's not enough for me to say no. I like this project a lot.
I do too.
figure that they likely do. I don't know that it's maybe quite as often as some other well-funded organizations. I think that that's been one asset that we have here. I know experienced here at the county is that they're very good at really being on top of some of those technology issues. And so I don't know that they're quite that, but I get the sense that they really try to maximize their resources, but I can't tell you for sure.
I just know that we had to recraft our replacement cycles because of the maintenance that comes through. It's now only 3 years for Chromebooks and that kind of thing. I know these aren't Chromebooks, but without paying really close attention to it, we got caught a little bit.
Oh. So what do you do? What do you do with the Chromebooks then after 3 years?
Recycle them.
I was talking with and this kind of leads into the next project, but I was talking, obviously, I have another friend who's in the parochial school system at St. Pius. And I guess what they've always done is that you get access to a Chromebook at like 5th grade, 6th grade, and then through 8th grade. And then at 8th grade, you take that with you because it's not a value anymore.
Right.
So they can't use it as a thing. So I wondered, okay.
What we have found in our company is since we switched to laptops a few years back, and thank God we did, I don't know what we would be doing right now. Since we switched to only buying laptops, they do wear out quicker because they're mobile. So those little tiny parts inside are getting jostled about. And so we used to be able to count on a computer lasting 4 or 5 years. And now we're lucky to get 3 full years out of some of them. And then what we end up doing is our computers that are bought for engineers that have a lot more memory and a capability, then they get cycled down to somebody who doesn't use that type of programming. So we're still able to use them. And then eventually they go to the graveyard, which the graveyard is, I don't even know what our tech consultant just takes them and probably shoots holes through them. I don't even know what they do. I don't know. I guess they recycle them. I'm sure they recycle them. But I mean, they just don't last like they used to. I sound like an old person. I sound like my mom, like, oh, those washing machines, they just don't last.
But it's true.
It is true.
Well, and I think about it, you got 110 women in this facility accessing potentially seven computers. I can't imagine that that's going to last too long. You know, people are just hard on these things, especially when they don't personally own them or use them all the time. So I don't know. It's probably, so I can see them needing something like this though. Yeah. Well, I'll jump real quickly into Community Action Commission then, and then we can talk on to. So Community Action, this project, it was a little, this was another one that I had some concerns with about the funding piece, partially, also the dynamics of the project, I have to say. So the fact that it was an even split, the project proposal is 85 Chromebooks to low-income families and parochial schools, to people who are enrolled in Gateway, single parents in Gateway, low-income single parents, and then those who are going through treatment of cancer. So first of all, it felt like a kind of strange grouping of people. And then I had questions about it. So, you know, anecdotally, personally, we're in a parochial school system. I have friends that are in the parochial school systems. And to my knowledge, the schools have found ways to provide these kind of devices for the kids to use for this issue. Now, of course, perhaps this is something that they want to have at home available to them, even if remote learning doesn't happen. But I wonder how many are of the parochial schools students qualify as low income in Boone County. So we have a handful of parochial schools here, and of course, they don't necessarily have to live in Boone County to go to a different school. but that number seemed odd. Actually, the piece with the single parents made a lot of sense. I felt like it was really in CAC's wheelhouse. They have a Scholar House project in Covington, that they work with Gateway and single parents. That felt really there. And the cancer support, a little like a strange fit here. And they got a letter saying that they had folks who were needing it, but it was from the Cancer Society. But again, it felt like a strange piece to it. I reached out to ask them if they had gotten that, and they assured me that they had information and contacts and organizations associated with all of that who could vouch for the demand. But it was somebody at the diocese for the parochial schools, and it was this person with Cancer Center. And it seems easy, a connection making with Gateway. But then through the project itself, as I mentioned earlier, they were including things in here like an administrative budget expenses. They were putting things like occupancy and matching as for their matching, things like that, which were just outside of our scope, really. So, I reached out and kind of shared the difference with this program and this project, and I feel like the other two projects, is that this is not an asset that at the end of the day CAC is going to have. They're not going to retain this and put this on their books necessarily for 5 years that they have, all these Chromebooks. This is actually, it really is a project going out into the community, providing a service. So there's a benefit to that. When I asked them to reconsider this and kind of explain they really need a cash match for projects for the capital fund, they reviewed she went back and reviewed it and realized that she could not provide this program at the time if that was going to be the qualification. So she would be willing to resubmit, and she did resubmit for items taking out the administrative expenses and things like that, but she was not going to be able to actually provide a cash match. And so my proposal is, and our suggestion here is that we consider this because of the difference in this project compared to the other two, that if they provide an in-kind match for this instance, is that something that this board wants to consider? If we do, I don't know that if that's the consideration, I don't know that the full 85 laptop or Chromebooks for all of these groups makes sense. I know Dylan and I kind of were hashing it out and trying to come up with a smaller, more reasonable number. We thought maybe 85 for those single parents there. That makes sense potentially, but maybe 25 for the parochial schools and 25 for those who are going through cancer. It seems maybe a little bit more reasonable than that full amount, which would bring it down to $40,500. So, and then that would not allow for any marketing or advertising. That would be something that they would need to can do on their own as a match. Thoughts about this?
You're muted. Yeah, sorry.
There we go. Can you bring up the spreadsheet again that shows so the request was it 84,000?
Originally 87.9. Now she did change that, and let me pull. I did have her pull up a.
Let me see if I understand this. So to your point, like giving the computers, because it wouldn't actually be a capital expenditure that they would have on their books that they would retain after year, because really they're just buying these computers and giving them away. Am I right about that? It's not, that sounds more like a program than it does like a capital thing. That sounds, that isn't like this particular wheelhouse, right?
We do say that you can do technology purchases, but I think when we are doing the planning of this would be more in line with what Brighton Center had. We did fund some kind of programming type things last year, as far as we paid for the van and the development of the app for these were really capital things that helped them develop a program. So yeah, I agree. It's like, I think this is the way I could look at it, is purchasing this item so that they can operate it and get it out into the community. But it isn't necessarily a perfect fit. I agree.
So they're giving these laptops or these Chromebooks to the people to keep. They're not doing a loaning library or anything like that.
No, they would keep that.
That feels a little weird to me. I'm just gonna
I
be
think
honest.
so too. I agree. I keep sitting here listening, thinking, I don't understand. Like, there's just like a missing piece or something. Like, I just can't wrap my head around it.
I mean, if it was like a loaner type of a program, you know, like I know at my daughter's schools that UC has this where, you know, your laptop breaks down, you go and you check out one of their laptops to be able to use or whatever. Maybe that, but it still stays within your world. Like it's still UC's property. To make, I mean, that's essentially just giving away a whole bunch of computers. And not that I'm saying people aren't worthy of it, but that just, I could see that coming back to bite the county if we approve that somebody who is really funny about taxes and where we spend our money might look at that and go, what were you all thinking? I mean, I hate to say it like that because I love helping people, but that's a tough one. Because then you would say, who exactly qualifies?
Right. I agree with you on that. That was what I was going to say, is what are the criteria for here's a Chromebook for you, but not for you.
Does everybody remember that time when people used to say something about everybody gets a cell phone? I now don't think it was true. I don't even know, but I'm like, the last thing that I want is for us as a group to be voting on something where they're like, well, yeah, that group was like, yeah, everybody gets a free Chromebook. I mean, we do not want that.
It's so their criteria is that people, the individuals who are identified by their partner agencies had to be at 200% of the federal poverty level or below. And then they'd have to fall into one of these three groups. They have to be identified by the parochial school, so the Diocese of Covington, by Gateway Community College, and then also through St. Elizabeth. So those would be their three partner agencies who would help identify these individuals. And it appears that they would also do some stuff at their Boone County Neighborhood Center.
That's what I was going to say. Is there a component in there that says it has to be, they have to live in Boone County, or that it has to stay in Boone County, or, because it's Boone County tax money?
Yeah, it has to be a Boone. I did clarify that with her. I said, so what is your question? Because these are Boone County, it has to go to Boone County residents. So she said that they are aware that these are restricted to Boone County residents and that they would do those quality checks. And they have to do that with their other programmatic money that they receive, CAC does. So they should be familiar with that. And then they would just have to translate that over to those other programs. So it would at least definitely be Boone County residents. Now, permanently, no, perhaps if somebody lived in Boone County and then they moved to Kenton County, then it would still stay with them. I don't think they would take the Chromebook back, but
right.
Trying to see if I have any responses for you all.
So you said that they have to be at 200% poverty level?
Or less.
Mm-hmm. Or less. I mean, I think I can see that then, if that is the case, it's proven that these people need help. And I guess by separating it into categories, you're essentially saying people who are going through a tragic illness like cancer, people who are students if they're at Gateway, and then the third one was, what was the third one? Parochial school students? Yeah. So, I mean, I can get that. I mean, I understand that. So our company donates to AQ, which is the inner city Catholic school kids. So I'm wondering if, I don't know. I don't know. It surprises me that there's parochial school kids who are it shouldn't surprise me that they're at 200% poverty and they're going to a parochial school in Boone County.
That was a question I had too. I mean, there are, I think that's obviously there are going to be some, how many are outside that AQ area, I don't know. But I can't imagine that, even the schools in Boone County aren't substantially large. They're not the largest in the diocese. So to have 85 of them that would be at to under 200% of the poverty level seemed a little large to me. And Dylan and I, when we discussed it, we thought it was a little bit outsized.
The proposal did mention that they'd be ordering the Chromebooks in batches. They posed that as like a security thing so that they wouldn't have a room full of hundreds of Chromebooks, but also has the additional effect of if there is less demand than they anticipate, then they're not necessarily going to have extra Chromebooks lying around. So that's an aspect.
I would love to hear both of your opinions, Laura and Dylan, as to, what you guys think. First of all, do you feel like this will be something that will come back to, I always look at it like if I'm talking to my neighbor and I tell them I'm on this board and they go, well, what did you give to? And that I can feel confident about what I'm saying that that their tax dollars are going towards. So I'm curious as to, you guys, I feel like are in the know, that you know a lot more about these programs than I would ever know. So what do you think?
It's not my favorite project, my favorite proposal. I don't feel like it's the strongest proposal that we've ever received from CAC. We had some earlier conversations over the summer, and I was under the impression that Brighton Center and CAC were going to work together to get some technology into hands of seniors in our community to help them connect while everybody's socially isolated and separated. And so this project really does seem, as I said earlier, it seems incongruent, a lot of it, with what CAC normally does, especially those two particular groups. I don't see anecdotally a large demand at the rural schools, but again, that's just my personal experience and the that I've talked to in my social circles and family circles who participate in those programs. The cancer support, that one seems so odd to me. Like I don't fully see that, and perhaps the college student is, but I don't know at the level of Gateway how many that would already need to have some kind of technology to begin with to participate. On the other hand, I mean, the Chromebooks are not huge assets. They're $300 tablets that within 3 years are going to lose their potentially could lose their value beyond a piece of it. As far as perception of the community, I think somebody who's going to come in and always have a negative opinion about things, but certainly there are different other programs are valued at a lot more or cost the program, the department, the organization, fiscal court a lot more than this a $300 Chromebook. But I think there is a perception there. If we do a dental service for somebody, they don't necessarily see that, oh, your teeth are now fixed, and that you don't get that. There's the intrinsic value behind having that. You don't really understand that. But if you see a technology piece, that's something to be concerned about. It's not my favorite project, I have to say. I was underwhelmed by this, especially given the project that they proposed last year. But wanted to propose, in case you all felt moved to do it, and if you did, to say that maybe we should do it at a lower level than what they requested.
The only
Kathy,
thing,
sorry. Go ahead, Dylan.
the only things that I would add to that, it seems like they were using contacts that they already had, and that's why it's kind of like a random grouping of 3 things. Honestly, if this were just the low-income single-parent households enrolled in at Gateway, that would seem like a stronger proposal to me without the other 2. Regarding public perception, it definitely does bring up some risks. My counterpoint to that would be that the way that they describe marketing it, and also since it's from the Community Action Center, I don't know that it's necessarily right for someone who might just be like at 199% of the poverty level to get a free Chromebook, because if you're already plugged into the CAC, you probably have needs. So there's a lot of pro-con stuff for it.
Kathy, what do you think?
I agree with the one area of the Gateway students, because we do see a lot of single parents who are going to school to upgrade. I also see that that could take into consideration some of the EL population that goes to Gateway. I still worry about not having it be a loaner type of a situation where they use it for the year, bring it back, still can get it again, but it still belongs to Community Action Commission. That would be my concern.
I agree with the Gateway component. Like, I'm all for that component, but the other ones I'm a little more iffy about.
I would agree. Could we limit it to that? Are we allowed to do that?
Yeah, I think we could certainly get back and say, well, the recommendation is to limit it to this piece. I can take it to her and say this, and before it goes to the fiscal court. And if they opt not to do that, we don't take it to the fiscal court. We can say that that's certainly an option. If you all are comfortable with that, I think we can make a justification for that. But again, if the board feels that it's just too far outside of the comfort zone for what would be a capital expense because of the way they designed it, then we can certainly act in that way too.
I think I
Mull
would
it over for a minute.
With the Gateway piece.
I would agree with that.
So that would be then, look at the way that they broke this down. If it's just for the application for that device, let me do a quick math adjustment here. So at that point, based on what we've discussed, we would make a change to that allocation number. And so if we looked at that today, then it would be $25,500, which would be for 85, up to 85 Chromebooks for Gateway students. And as Dylan mentioned, this is kind of the piece to all of our funds, is that they're all reimbursement based. So they wouldn't necessarily be purchasing these and then just keeping them in the office and not using them throughout the process. But does that sound reasonable for the group?
Yes, that sounds good to me.
Absolutely.
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay. And how are we sitting with the Point and Brighton Center? Are you liking those projects? Dee, for your reminder, the department recommendation was 0, and Brighton Center, it was 24,000, which would be 75% of the total project cost.
Okay.
I'd say yes for both.
I say yes for both.
I
Okay.
agree.
All right. Well, great. That was relatively painless, I think. I didn't have to listen to myself talk. You all did. Any other questions or anything?
I don't think so. Good work you guys did.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Make it easy for us.
I'm sorry.
Yes, you do. She said you make it easy for us.
I said you make it easy for us.
Well, thank you. That's my my goal here, even though I didn't have my projects pulled up from calendar year 20, so I've learned my lesson. I'll get that better prepared next time. Thank you. So what happens now, as I said earlier, we'll take these projects to the fiscal court in the first week in December, the first week in December for approval, and those funds are available to them in early January, beginning January. I will reach out to CAC to verify that they can do the 85 for the students, and then try to get that question answered about the computer replacement schedule for Brighton Center and get that back to you all.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. Any other questions? Anything else going on?
I don't think so.